Hello and welcome to Auto Shenanigans. How the devil are you? Have you had a good week? My name is John. Thank you very much for joining me for another exciting Great British Road Journey. This week I'm back in Yorkshire and we'll be taking a look around what's known as the East Riding of Yorkshire, which is a fancy way of saying East Yorkshire, and it's famous for some nice countryside. I don't know what else, but maybe we'll find out as we take a journey from Goole to Hull. As always, to help navigate our way around, we'll be using my 1923 Michelin guidebook, period correct maps, and Goole just sounds unpleasant, doesn't it? It looks it too, but to be fair, Goole is a port and industrial town that, in the days of my guidebook, was a fairly busy place with around 20,000 residents. All my guidebook says about Goole is sea docks. Righto. Goole Docks, or the Port of Goole, opened in the 1820s, and it's interesting because it's 50 miles from the sea, making it one of the largest inland ports in the country, which today seems completely pointless, but back then it made perfect sense. The main goal of Goole Docks was to move coal that had been mined but a short distance away in West Yorkshire, and the port's location was chosen because it was the nearest they could get to the coal mines while still having water deep enough to use larger ships. At the time, it was quite a clever decision by the port owner. The next nearest port was further along the river in Hull, and if you wanted to transport your goods, you could save a lot of time by shipping them via Goole instead, meaning profit for Goole Port. An interesting feature or features of the port are the two water towers that couldn't be any more different from one another. The thinner brick tower was built in 1885 with a capacity of 140,000 litres and it stands at 43 metres high. The only slightly taller concrete tower of 44 metres was built in 1927 to replace it, and it has an amazing capacity of 3.4 million litres, and at the time of its construction it was the largest concrete water tower in Europe. Both are now grade listed structures and they don't really do a lot, but they do serve as a nice visual landmark for the area. Moving on from Goole, and we're going to head to the town of Howden, a short distance away. To get there we'll be following the A614, which is fine, but there's a bit of a problem if we want to stay true to the period correct route. River. Pretty f***ing big river actually, and in the old days we'd have been using a ferry service to cross over the river that was put in place in the 1500s, but the ferry ceased to exist after 1929 when the Booth Ferry Bridge was constructed to replace it at a cost of about 9 million quid in today's money. It's a steel girder or truss bridge that's about 210 metres long, and one of its spans is movable and can swing out of the way when larger boats want to pass through, operated via a control room that's attached to the bridge. It's alright. And just up the road from the bridge is the town of Howden, an ancient market town that hasn't really been doing a lot. In the days of my guidebook, there are around 2,000 residents, and today it's nearer 4,000. My guidebook suggests that maybe we'd like to take a look at St Cuthbert's Church, and I don't know why, because it looks crap. Here's an image from Street View because I can't even be bothered to go there. Anyway, if churches are your thing, there's the far more interesting Howden Minster to look at, oddly overlooked by my guidebook in favour of whatever that shit heap was. Howden Minster is right in the middle of Howden, and it's a church with some ruined buildings. Whilst most of the main church building has been replaced over the years, there are some parts that are of its original 1265 construction, so it's quite old then. The ruined parts of the church are the remains of an extension that was built in the 1300s, and it would have all been part of one large church. However, the extension collapsed in 1696, and at the time they couldn't be bothered to pay for its repair, so instead fenced it off and left it as a ruin whilst continuing to operate the unaffected main church building, and that's how it's been ever since. Let's make our way to our next destination, and to get there we'll be using what used to be the main road in the area, the A63, which has now been downgraded significantly to become the B1230 following the construction of the M62 motorway. And when we reach the M62, we have to use a new road alignment because the original road, which used to follow this route, is no longer available. However, whilst it's no longer available for us to drive down, some of the original road still exists as a short section of abandoned road. And interestingly, a bit further along is a short section of dual carriageway that today makes no sense, but it's a leftover from when the A63 was the main road through here. Our next stop is the town of Brough, I think it's Brough. It's fine. Our next stop is a town which used to be home to Brough Aerodrome, set up in 1916 by the Blackburn Aircraft Company, which would later become BAE Systems, who would manufacture aircraft like the Harrier and the Hawk. But the last flight would take place in 2011, with the airfield closing in 2013, and BAE Systems shut up shop in 2020, marking the end of over 100 years of aircraft manufacturing within the UK's oldest aircraft factory. Today, the aerodrome has mostly gone. Where I'm standing standing now used to be the main runway, which between the years of 1949 and 1957 was used as a race circuit, offering a 1.17-mile lap when combined with the airfield's perimeter roads. And it's said that it was at this venue where Stirling Moss saw his first race victory. As for the town of Brough itself, it's not mentioned in my guidebook, so let's f*** off. Yes, let's, and we'll be sticking with the A63 because there's no other choice. Whilst it's now a dual carriageway, it still follows the same route according to our period correct maps, until it doesn't, and we have to leave the A63 to pick up the B1231 in order to stay true to the old route. And the B1231 brings us through the small village of North Ferriby. There is a South Ferriby. It's over there on the other side of the Humber, but that's not important. North Ferriby doesn't have a great deal going on, but between the 1930s and 1960s, some discoveries were made here that would cement North Ferriby into the history books forever, maybe. What was discovered was the remains of some old wooden boats that were buried within the Humber estuary. They revealed themselves following a shift in the mud and sands that make up the estuary, so they were dug out and examined. What at first glance appeared to be some old wooden boats were indeed some old wooden boats, but the last of these to be discovered in the 1960s was dated back to the year 2000 BC, which is bloody old, and they were later officially declared as Europe's oldest or earliest surviving seacraft. Their survival is down to them being buried and completely waterlogged in a scenario where there's no oxygen, meaning bacteria or fungal growth isn't possible, meaning the wood hadn't rotted away. The same can't be said for the Lord Line building found on the riverfront in Hull. Oh yeah, I'm in Hull now. The abandoned building sits next to St Andrew's Dock, which is also abandoned, and it was built in 1949 as the main offices for the Lord Line Trawling Company. In those days, fishing was big business in Hull, and it's said that at the time the Lord Line Company had the largest deep water fishing fleet in the world, and it was all orchestrated from these buildings. The fishing industry collapsed quite dramatically in Hull during the mid-1970s, and with that, many companies would close down. Whilst the Lord Line building would continue to be used for a few more years, it would close down for good in 1980, and it's been sat here doing nothing ever since. With a history of fishing and being a port town, it should be no surprise that in the days of my guidebook, Hull was a very busy place indeed, with over 290,000 residents, and that's probably more than there is today if we exclude Hull's suburbs and surrounding areas. In 2017, Hull was awarded the title of the City of Culture. I don't know why, but my guidebook suggests maybe we'd like to visit Hull's City Hall and Art Gallery. Maybe it's that. The City Hall was built in 1909, and it's a rather lovely structure built in the Baroque Revival style, and its primary use has been for entertainment and as an art gallery. Whilst it has continued to be used for live or music events in more recent times, the art gallery closed way back in 1927 and was moved to here, a separate building across the road. Look, we were just there. It's known as the Ferrens Gallery, named after Thomas Ferrens, who donated it to the city of Hull. Nice guy. Inside are paintings by artists, and they must be good because in 2017 over 500,000 people visited the gallery. Maybe that City of Culture award was justified. Maybe not. To the east side of Hull, in a place called Salt End, is a massive chemical works that was opened in 1914 by the North Eastern Railway Company. Back then, it was a far simpler affair. The railway company built a jetty to accept fuel and oil via ship, which they would then run up to the nearby King George Dock via railway, where it could then be further processed or transported. And then the likes of Shell and BP got involved, and from the 1930s, the site saw rapid expansion. Today, the site is a mixture of industries making acetic acid, ethyl acetate, biofuel and ammonia, which all sounds delightful. And indeed, this site, along with the wider industrial region, is said to be the largest CO2 emitter in the UK, if you care about that sort of thing. There's definitely acid in the air. And there we are then, guys. That's all we've got time for this week. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, there is of course a button specifically for that, and if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. That'd be wicked sweet awesome. Enjoy the rest of your week, whatever it is you get up to. My name's John, you've been watching Auto Shenanigans, and I'll see you guys next time for another exciting Great British Road Journey. Until then, take care, bye-bye. Michelin guidebook, period correct maps.